Hello and welcome to Whiz Book World. Yep, you heard it, Whiz Book World. And Whiz Book World is going to be a new series where I'm going to be reading Harry Potter to you guys. And first off, today we're going to be starting with Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone. And if you haven't read it, it's a great book. You can read along. And I'm just going to start. And it's chapter 1, The Boy Who Lived. And by the way, I'll be reading about 1 to 2 chapters every time, so you might want to tune in if you want to hear the Harry Potter book series. Mr. and Mrs. Dursley of number 4, Pivot Drive, were proud to say that they were perfectly normal. Thank you very much. They're the last people you expect to be involved in anything strange or mysterious, because they just didn't believe. They just didn't hold with such nonsense. Mr. Dursley was the director of a firm called Grunnings, which made drills. He was a big, beefy man with hardly any neck, although he had a very large moustache. Mrs. Dursley was thin, blonde, and had nearly twice the usual amount of neck, which came very useful as she spent so much of her time craning over garden fences, spying on the neighbors. The Dursleys had a small son called Dudley, and in their opinion there was no finer boy anywhere. The Dursleys had everything they wanted, but they also had a secret, and their greatest fear was that someone was going to discover it. They just didn't think that they could bear if anyone found out about the Potters. Mrs. Potter was Mrs. Dursley's sister, but they haven't met for several years. In fact, Mrs. Dursley pretended she didn't have a sister, because her sister and her good-for-nothing husband were as undursley as possible to be. The Dursleys shuddered to think what the neighbors would say if the Potters arrived in the street. The Dursleys knew that the Potters had a small son too, but they had never seen him. This boy was a good reason for keeping the Potters away. They didn't want Dudley mixing in with a child like that. When Mr. and Mrs. Weasley woke up with a dull grey Tuesday, our story starts. There was nothing about the cloud sky outside, it was just that strange and mysterious things would soon be happening all over the country. Mrs. Dursley hammered as he picked out his most boring tie for work, as usual, and Mrs. Dursley gossiped away happily as he wrestled the screaming Dudley into his high chair. Now the notice a large, tawny owl flutter past the window. At 8:30, Mr. Dursley picked up his briefcase, pecked Mrs. Dursley on the chin, and tried to kiss Dudley goodbye, but missed, because Dudley was just now having a tantrum and throwing his seat off the walls. Little Tiny choked Mr. Dursley as he left the house. He got into his car and backed out number 4's drive. It was on the corner of the street that he noticed the first sign of something peculiar: a cat reading a map. For a second Mr. Dursley didn't realize what he had seen. Then he jerked his head around to look around. There was a tabby cat standing on the corner of Pivot Drive, but there was a map in sight. What could he be thinking of? It must have been a trick of the light. Mr. Dursley blinked and stared at the cat. It stared back. And as Mr. Dursley drove around the corner and up the road, he watched the cat in his mirror. It was now reading the sign that said Pivot Drive. No, looking at the cars. Cats can read maps of signs. Mr. Dursley gave himself a little shake and put the cat out of his mind. As he drove towards town, he thought of nothing except the large row of drills he was hoping to get at. But on the edge of town, drills were driven out of his mind by everything else. As usually said in the morning traffic jam, he couldn't help notice, but there seemed to be a lot of strangely dressed people about. People in cloaks. Mr. Dursley couldn't hear. Mr. Dursley couldn't bear people who dressed in funny clothes, the get-ups you saw on young people. This was supposed to be some new stupid fashion. He drummed his finger on the steering wheels, and his eyes fell on a huddle of weirdos standing close by. They were whispering excitedly together. Mr. Dursley was arranged to see that a couple of them weren't young at all. Why, that man had to be older than he was, and wearing a emerald green coat. The nerve of him struck him. But then it struck Mr. Dursley that it was probably some silly stunt. These people were obviously collecting for something. Yes, that would be it. The traffic moved on, and a few minutes later Mr. Dursley arrived at the Grunnings parking lot, his mind back on drills. Mr. Dursley always sat with his back to the window in his office on the night floor. If he hadn't, he might have found itself harder to concentrate on drills that morning. He didn't see any owls swooping past in broad daylight, although people in the streets did. They pointed to gates open-mouthed as owl after owl sped overhead. Most of them seen an owl even at night time. Mr. Dursley, however, had a perfectly normal owl-free morning. He yelled at 5 different people. Yeah, as usual again. He made several important telephone calls and shouted a bit more. He was in a very good mood until lunchtime, when he thought he'd stretch his legs and walk across the road to buy himself a bun from the bakery. He'd forgotten all about the people in the cloaks until he passed a group of them next to the bakery. He eyed them angrily as he paused past. He didn't know why, but they made him uneasy. This bunch was whispering excitedly too, and they couldn't see a single collected tin. It was on his way past back, clutching a large donut in a bag, that he called a few words of what they were saying. "The Potters! That's right, that's what I heard. It's the son Harry." Mr. Dursley dropped dead. Fear blinded him. He looked back at the whispers as if he wanted to say something to him, but thought better of it. He dashed back the road, hurried up to his office, snapped at the secretary not to disturb him, seized the telephone, and almost finished dialing home number 1 as he changed his mind. He put the receiver book down, stroked his mustache, thinking, no, he was stupid. Potter wasn't such an unusual name. He was sure there were lots of people called Potters whose son called Harry. Come to think of it, he wasn't even sure his nephew was called Harry. He'd never even seen the boy. Might have been Harvey or Harold. There's no point in worrying. Mrs. Dursley, she always got upset at any mention of her sister. He didn't blame her if he had a sister like that. But all the same, those people in the cloaks. He found it harder to concentrate on drills that afternoon. And when he left the building at 5 o'clock, he was so worried that he walked strange someone outside the door. Sorry, he grunted as the old tiny man stumbled and almost fell. It was a few seconds before Mr. Dursley realized that the man was also wearing a violet coat. He didn't seem at all upset at being almost knocked to the ground. On his contrary, his face slipped into a wide smile, and he said in the squeaky voice that made the passerby stare, "Don't be sorry, my dear sir, for nothing can accept me today. Remember, rejoice, for you know who has gone at last. Even muggles like yourself should be celebrating this happy day." The old man hugged Mr. Dursley around the middle and walked off. Mr. Dursley stood rooted to the spot. He had been hugged by a complete stranger. He also thought he had been called Muggle, whatever that was. He was rattled. He hurried off to his car and set for home, hoping he was imagining things, which he had never hoped for because he didn't approve of imagination. As he pulled into the driveway number 4, the first thing he saw and didn't approve of his move was a tubby cat he had spotted that morning. He was now sitting on his garden wall. He was sure that it was the same one. It had the same markings around its eyes. "Shoo!" said Mr. Dursley loudly. The cat didn't move. It just gave him a stern look. Was this normal cat behavior? Mr. Dursley wondered. Trying to pull himself together, he let himself into the house. He was still undetermined to mention anything to his wife. Mrs. Dursley had a nice, normal day. She told him all at dinner about the Mrs. Next Door's problems with the dot and how Dudley had learned a new one. Won't is actually in the book. Mr. Dursley tried to act normally. When Dudley had been put to bed, he went to the living room in time to catch the last report on the evening news. And finally, bird watchers everywhere have reported that the nation's owl have been behaving very unusually today. Although all's normal had never had a single daylight, there must have been hundreds of sightings of these birds flying in every direction. Experts are unable to explain why the owls have suddenly changed their sleeping pattern. The newscaster allowed himself again. Most mysterious. And now over to Jim McGuffin with the weather. Going to be any more showers of owls tonight, Jim? Well, Ted, said the weatherman, I don't know, but it's not that. It's just been owls acting today. Views as far as Kent, Yorkshire, and Dundee have been phoning in to tell me it's the rain that is promised today. They've had a downpour of shooting stars. Perhaps next week perhaps people have been celebrating bonfire not early. It's not until next week's, folks, but I can still promise a wet night tonight. Mr. Dursley sat frozen in his armchair. Shooting stars all over Britain, owls by different daylight, mysterious people in cloak all over the place, and a whisper about the Potters. So, we're on page 6 right now. I know, it's been 10 minutes, so I can't go any further. And so I will read more next time, so you can just come to my site, Sitting Off, at YouTube, and see you next time on I forgot the name too. Whiz Book World. Something like that. Whatever. Bye.